Good evening and welcome everybody. I'm sorry, we do have a live audience here. Good evening. Okay, because you're all at home, we are going to have to sort of adapt, and we've got a little studio audience here that's all socially distanced, and they're going to act as our ears and eyes and act on your behalf by clapping at the appropriate times. So let's just test it out. And the first act has just finished. There you go, just to prove we are live. Thank you, everybody. So I'd like to welcome you to this event. My name's Garry Stewart. I'm the Director of Recognised Black Heritage and Culture. Now we're here today to talk about Windrush. Most people understand that in 22nd of June in 1948, the SS Empire Windrush docked at Tilbury Docks in Essex. The ship actually arrived the night before, but due to the controversies that were shrouding the ship, people were not allowed to dock. Once the ship docked, it was actually carrying dreams, hopes and aspirations of a community that came from all across the Caribbean islands to come and work in Great Britain and settle and bring back Britain after the Second World War. Now today's event is strictly talking about artists who have been influenced by those from the Windrush generation and descendants of the Windrush generation. And today they will perform either a song or spoken word piece that will reflect those stories, the pioneers, trailblazers, and not least forgetting the scandal that's still miring some of those that came on that original ship. There were children, men and women, and some of those will inspire the people who are performing today, such as Mona Baptiste, who was a woman saxophonist. She became a very great well-known singer in Germany as well in here. She was on the ship, and there's many pictures that you may have seen of her as well. And also the Calypso King that people talked about, Lord Kitchener. I'm going to ask some of the acts today, once they've performed, I'm going to have a short Q&A with them. I'm going to ask them to talk and mention about those inspirations from those artists. So, with no further ado, we're going to introduce the first act.
So I want you guys to do me a favour, as we have a small audience there. So I think this song is pretty classic enough for you to know the exact point I want you to sing. Stop your messing around. Let's do it. Better think of your future. Turn it straight and right out. Creating problems in town. Rudy. A message to you, Rudy. A message to you. Stop your messing around. Let's go. Time to straighten right out. Better think of your future. Creating problems in town. Rudy. A message to you, Rudy. A message to you. Rudy, a message to you, Rudy. 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 Thank you. So ladies and gentlemen from home or anywhere else that you are, this song really inspired me quite a lot when I was a kid. I always remember hearing this during every barbecue. So hopefully you know this as well. So we hope you enjoy this. Very strong influence for me. No, no, no. You don't love me, and I know now. No, no, no. baby, I'd have got no place to go now. No, hey, said you don't know me, and I know now. Said oh no. Said you don't know me, and I know now. Said if you left me, baby, said I'd have got no place to go now. Cause if you left me, baby, said I've got no place to go now. Thank you so much. Thank all of you.
And here we are in the studio again with Call Me Unique.
Hi.
And her guitarist here, Jamal.
Yeah, no.
So we're going to test this out. Let's hear you make some noise again in the audience. So Unique, I'm going to start off and ask you a couple of questions. Can you just tell me where the name comes from first? Because I didn't ask you that earlier.
So I remember having a weird dream about actually meeting a tattooist, and strangely we got into a really amazing conversation, and I was talking about myself, and he went, "You're quite unique, aren't you?" And I went, "That's it. That's what I want." So I got it tattooed on my shoulder, and then when people saw me, they went, "Unique. I get it."
Okay.
So they called me Unique.
Yeah. Oh, right. There we
Yeah.
go. There we go. And that leads us on to, I mean, the two songs you sung today. Can you tell us what inspired you to sing them in reference to Windrush?
Oh, so in regards to Windrush, the extent of how the specials are so strongly connected to Windrush, I mean, being of that generation as far as actually having that direct connection, but also with Dawn Penn, with any bit of research I actually did about Windrush, I just kept seeing that song come up, and it was so consistent that for me it was actually quite a surprise, knowing that it's a song that I'm really familiar with in my own general spare time, and then to actually see that they had such a deep-rooted, or at least the artist and the creatives had such deep-rooted connections to Windrush. So it was actually quite a privilege and an honour to accidentally find that it was so connected.
And I was going to say, you did a slowed down a cappella type version there as well. Where everybody else would have been, well, we want to go into one. This is our novel event as well.
Definitely.
So I wanted to talk to you as well about your grandparents. We were talking earlier off screen for the viewers, and you were talking about your grandparents and the inspirations. And we were just joking about, one, they were looking down on you.
Yes.
Yeah, and two,
Oh,
I'll let you go on and say something.
Definitely. So I feel like every time I kind of tried to ask about their roots, their connections, it almost felt like a wound that they weren't really as ready to talk about. And I know that naturally they came here, you know, both grandparents actually came together to find work and really strive to tell both my mom and my dad, like, just focus on yourself, work hard, you know, be determined. And being as though my granddad was a famous cricketer, actually, like for Jamaica.
Hold on, she didn't tell us this at the time, so
he had such
reveal.
a strong connection to cricket, and knowing that the Windrush generation, the extent of how that sport was so strongly connected. So there's so many amounts of these things that really, in a good way, trigger my intrigue to find out more, investigate, and just know more about my culture, more about my background. Just because, again, even though the wounds are so deep-rooted, sometimes those conversations are really useful for the younger generation to come in and be thankful about the things and the experiences that we're actually able to not be connected to directly. So I'm really thankful that they are were as strong-willed enough to give us the small indications, but I'm really intrigued to find out more.
And Jamal as well, you were backing up there on guitar, so again we applaud you. Thank you
Thank you very much,
as
man.
well. And you're here today to back up back up Unique on guitar. What's your inspiration from Windrush Generation?
So it's just like when you look back at the amount of sacrifice that was made. Like, for example, we probably wouldn't even be here doing events like this today. And yeah, it's just crazy. I think it's so important that we know our history as well, because it helps us appreciate all the different things we can do so much more. And the more we can encourage other people to learn as well, the more we can include people in things like this and carry on do further events as well.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah. And will you both be celebrating on Tuesday? Tuesday is the National Windrush Day. For those who don't know, there'll be a flag raising at the council house to one of those pioneers as well. So have you got anything particular planned on that day? Or?
Barbecues.
Barbecue, okay. Okay, well thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having us.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Job. I've got Charlie and Joe here with me. We are a band called Ire-Ish. Now, we're one member down, as you can see. We've normally got our lead singer. It's this pesky thing called COVID. I don't know if you've heard of it, but I think it's absolutely amazing, this event. We can still go ahead as a live stream, even under these difficult circumstances. So, where's our renter crowd? Big round of applause for the organisers, please. Absolutely amazing. We're going to start with a poem, actually. This was recommended to me by Nick, and it's called Capital of Culture by Dr. Kwabena. And he was originally from Trinidad. He was the 6th Poet Laureate of Birmingham. We'll just read this out, and you can really enjoy the words while we have some music in the background as well. This is no mirage. Glittering canals engage industry alongside genius, exporting commerce and determination of humans in waves of precious resources settled in pursuit of excellence. Here a river flows directly, connected to many cities. Some bear her name begrudgingly, imitating her ingenuity, feigning success. And green men guard like the Sphinx's promise of a sustainable future, with learning elders and youth multilingual, proclaiming victories. Open spaces to breathe, alongside basins of promise, near where postmodernist world leaders have quenched their thirst. Minted coins. Fashioned precious stones jostle aromas of once exotic, now only tempting. Cuisines galore, carnivals in the shadow of public art, an entire district dedicated to the Balti. Lunar Society of Scientific Inquiry, Aston Hall where royalty dined. Abolitionists, friends and metalsmiths, confer as harvested chocolate is still prepared. Sporting arenas and automobile engines fine-tuned. Female advocacy, trade unionism, justice, equality and liberty. Rupert sacked but never conquered, Soho House resonates charm. Be immersed in her diversity without effort. Celebrate the many who gave in principle to follow forward 52 degrees north. Woo! It's a lovely recommendation there, Nick. It was a privilege to read. A little medley now. We'll take you on a virtual holiday from Jamaica to Ireland.
Back
of Athenry, where once we watched the small free birds fly. Our love was on the wing, we had dreams and songs to sing. It's so lonely round the fields of Athenry. It's so lonely round the fields of Athenry. That's your virtual holiday, everyone. I'm going to play in true Irish fashion. We'll give you some jigs now. So I wrote this first jig. It's called Josephine's jig, and then it will be followed by a traditional jig, the Keshe Jig. So here we go.
Again, a big round of applause. I've got to get this right. Ire-Ish?
Ire-Ish.
Ire-Ish. Big round of applause, please, studio audience. Excellent, excellent. Now, we've got Joe and Joe. So here we go, yeah, just to make it more difficult as well. And, you know, we can't start this interview without the T-shirt.
Yeah, man. Thought I had to, flag somewhere.
Someone else, what's your inspiration behind the T-shirt?
Well, I think being a Brummie, I think obviously we live in a very multicultural city and society, and I think as people not from Caribbean or Jamaican ancestry, we owe a lot to a lot of the Windrush generation that come over here in terms of culture, in terms of down to fashion, food, language, and I think coming from Irish Maltese, Irish English, that solidarity between people that have lived under Commonwealth or British imperialism or immigration, the solidarity between that, and I just saw it and I thought, right on my street, man, this is the perfect gig.
No, and I do understand as well that there was these common similarities between the two communities. The settled, I know that we took your word, Shebeen, which used them for the parties, which were very big in Birmingham, Handsworth culture as well. So it's great as well. Brilliant. So I'm going to ask you, Joe, as well, what inspired you to sing the songs you did today? And you said you did a medley there of Jamaican, mashup, Irish.
I love
Is that going to take off?
Do you think? Oh, maybe.
It could take off.
I hope it works.
Garry, anything can happen. They're great tunes. It's a Harry Belafonte one, Jamaica Farewell. One of my lovely tunes. I used to sing that one in nursing homes when I used to play at nursing homes,
Right,
get
okay.
everyone joining in.
Yeah.
And then Fields of Athenry, actually more recent than people might think. Both folk songs, but Fields of Athenry was written in 1979.
Right,
So it's
okay.
a more recent one, but still well loved by the Irish community. I think it's a
Excellent.
great mishmash.
Excellent as well. I was going to say as well, so in regard to Windrush, we've talked today, you've heard us talk to other people, inspiration as well. Did you know much about the Windrush culture growing up, or is it in a later life you've just...
No, it's like something I might have studied once, Wikipedia searches,
Right,
that
okay.
sort of thing. I guess if you live in Birmingham, is a multicultural city, you'll meet, you know, Jamaicans of all ages as well, and as musicians you get to travel, you get to meet people, you get to play in different places.
Yeah.
But you are right, more education's important. I'd like to be educated as well. I'd like to learn more. And Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, I think just being a lover of like reggae music and stuff, you
Right,
hear
okay.
a lot about, and love like that with the records and stuff. But no, I think more education is needed about it to reach outside of those communities so people see the
I
benefit.
want to plug your other band now. He's in another band,
got 30
Lobster.
seconds.
Ska-
We're going to be quick.
Oh, he's in a ska band called Lobster, so it's really important as well.
Oh,
to,
we could
these
talk
guys.
about that as well afterwards, yeah.
You need another half
Guys,
hour.
once again, thank you. Thank you to the rest of your
Thank
band
you,
as well
guys.
for joining
No
us
worries.
today.
Thank you for having
Thanks
us.
again.
Thanks for tuning in.
Okay, welcome everybody. I'd like to introduce to you Sue Brown. Step in, Sue. Sue's a spoken word artist and she'll be performing with Fitzroy Brown. Say hello, Fitzroy. Fitzroy's our double bassist for today. Sorry, it's Fitzroy. I've got it wrong. Karen. It's live, just to prove it. I'm going to step out the way.
Get me in trouble then.
Thank you.
Oh my God. Okay, when you're ready.
This piece is called Better Must Come. From the bright, sunny, tropical rhythms of the colonial West Indian collectives, easy-stepping migrants make a trot to the so-called motherland, England. You see, for many, life seemed limited and harder to prosper in their native-born land. Here, at least, England portrays a life filled with streets paved with gold. So many West Indians accepted the British invitation and made their plans. Jamaican-born musician, upright bass player, my dad, Joseph Brown, surmised, Me nah go England for idle. Just work hard for send money home, for care for family and land. Me not stopping long. Save little money, and after 5 years, me gone. Naturally, for these pioneers, later known as the Windrush generation, this was a pleasure to come and serve Her Majesty in the rebuilding of her country, to fill the post-war labor shortage. Little did they know that after a lifetime to come, after working and contributing to the wealth of this country, that some would be serving time, even deportation, for Her Majesty's pleasure. Anyways, a Jamaican song laments, better must come. March 1955. After 3 weeks at sea, the revamped retired warship, the Santa Maria, limbers into the cold, dark, dismal, dank port of the illustrious Southampton docks. Her consignment, black settlers. A few years earlier, 1948, coverage from media attention echoed a warm and friendly welcome. Now, they provoke inflammatory headlines. Black flood. And when will it end? It looks as though the mother country's begun to express her concerns towards her colonial children. Anyway, young, gifted, and Jamaican. Felt hats, floral shirts, and of course the finest suits and dresses in the world. Disembark with style and grace. These shows I'd never ever seen before. Brown trendy grips suspend from rich colored willing hands. Comely, beautiful hands, hard-working testimony of heritage, culture, and pride. Lord have mercy. At this them call Great Britain. One by one, hopeful, smiling faces begin to wince and grimace at their first sight of the land of hope and glory. Confused, trembling and clinging tightly to their fluttering summer garments. Neat hats begun to leap high into the breezy, bracy, wintry air, while immaculate hairdos tumbles into an unexpected frenzy. With such a disdain approach, harsh, bitter winds terrorize and interrogate each sun-kissed traveler. Obviously, the forebearer to passport control regulations. God save our gracious queen. Passport. Oh, good day to you, sir. And what is your reason for coming to England, sir? Reason? But no matter England invite her children, sir. Next. No, hold on, listen. Me's a hard-working laborer from Jamaica. We come to fix up the place that Hitler mashed down. Laborer? We have different standards to what you may be used to, sir. But is you invite us to come and rebuild your broke down country, sir, because uno na do it. What else do you do, sir? Oh, me's a musician. A few of the boys, they are ready, like Andy Hamilton and the great Lord Kitchener. We bring little rhythm, become nice up the place. Yes, we've heard your jungle music, sir. It's not very British now, is it? Next. What a welcome. It wasn't long before reality began to creep through. Me say me want go home. Me say me want go home a me country. Me say me want go home. Me say me want go home a me yard. A few months later, letters home to let folks know that England wasn't quite what they had expected. Dear Mama, good day. I hope when this letter reach you, it may find you in the best of health. Mama, you remember the English white man who come to town begging us to come and rebuild the motherland? Guess what? Me can't find him. Now him did say, oh, we are all brothers and sisters in this world. What better to come and serve those who served and fought for your free world? And Mama, remember all the jobs and vacancies this man did advertise? Him never tell we say we have to read between the lines, the lies, to discover the unwritten laws of the color bar system. As professionals, we already have the experience, but them tell we say, oh, with great enthusiasm. You'll have to retrain, start at the bottom, reapply, then come again. But it not stop there. Every house me go for apply, Mama them put up signs saying, no Irish, No dogs, no blacks. But where were those signs when we were called to fight in their great white world wars? And as for the streets being paved with gold, Mama, Jamaica might be poor and have little things, but at least we clean. Clean. Mama, me carry the big old bass to perform at one club. Me walk little more because what? Nobody want give me a lift, not even taxi. When me reach at the doorman blocked me, him said, "We were expecting you earlier, boy. Anyways, it's whites only, and you're not welcome. So, hop it." When me looking at the window, the band is white, them a play jazz, but them already have a boy a play bass. Him couldn't even run the scales. But his skin is white, and mine is not. Mama, this place really looked like the land of hardship for the black man, woman, and child. Perhaps nothing really changed from the plantation system. But we now give up. Who knows what the future will bring if we make a try? After all, we are West Indians, and as African ascendants, we have to remember, say, the great Marcus Messiah Garvey come and inspire us from these tribulations. So, the harder they come, we know, say, we have to stand firm. We can't make them beat us down. Anyhow, Mama, we see how things go. Better must come. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Sue. Wow. I don't know where to start with that, but I'll tell you where I am going to start actually. Audience, our in-house studio audience, make some noise for Sue Brown. And I'm going to get it right, Fitzroy Karen, our bassist. Well, I'm to Fitz. Oh, brilliant, thank you. So Sue, I was stood there making some notes, so I've got paper in my hand this time, and I don't know where to start to unpack that as well. So let's go back to the beginning, because I mentioned your father, Joseph Brown. Let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
So tell me a bit about Joseph Brown.
All right.
And what inspired
Like
you.
many people who came here in the 50s, 40s and 50s, my dad came here. A few years later, my mother came, and they came from Jamaica. And as my piece shows, you know, their time here, it wasn't quite what they had expected. But, you know, but as he said, we are, as he would put it, we are Jamaicans or we're West Indians. And you just have to try, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Did you find he spoke about his experience here? I mean, you remember me.
Yeah.
Did he speak about it a lot? Was he involved?
All the time.
All the time.
All the time. Yeah.
So we've got this mixed message where some people didn't talk about it, didn't enjoy it.
But he taught about it.
Yeah. And there was something else. There's a few things. Viewers, you've got to hold on. We're going to be jumping around here like crazy so much as well. You talked about the 5-year plan as well, which most of them came here with a 5-year plan.
Five-year
So
plan.
can you elaborate on that?
that was the idea. Like you said, save some money to go home, just be here for 5 years. But then after a time you're here and then you perhaps have a relationship, have children, you know, and then things are hard to kind of return home. So many stayed. Yeah,
and I think that's why we now have our first, second and third generation of descendants as well.
Yeah.
So let's go back as well. What else did I pick up? There's so much to talk about there. You talked about him playing with Andy Hamilton as well.
Yeah,
great drummer
so
as well.
I'm not sure if my dad knew Andy before he left Jamaica, but definitely when he came here.
Yeah.
So as a bass player, so my dad played upright bass, he played baritone sax, clarinet. He played a number of instruments actually.
Right, as well. And is that where you picked up your musical ability? In a spoken word fashion.
Yeah, I don't play an instrument.
You don't play instruments after all that?
I know. So when I was asked to do this piece, I thought it would be fitting to have a bass player, and hence this is why I asked Fitzroy.
So it's a tribute.
Yeah.
A tribute to Josephine as well. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about as well, you really packed a lot of information in there about everybody's experiences. So it was really, I don't have much to say after that. I had a whole script here to talk about, and you seemed to fit it in the song as well.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to write that song?
So I think the first two verses were something, first two paragraphs, there was something that I'd written before, so I adapted it for my dad. So everything, all those things about my dad, those, I put in later on.
Okay, as well. Now, you talk about influences from the Windrush generation as well.
Yeah.
You're first descendant to Windrush generation as well.
I was born.
So what's your experience? Let's put your families aside. What's your personal experience of Windrush, and then reflecting that back in the song? Because like I said, you spoke about a lot of things that would have been personal to you.
Yeah. I was born in the 60s, 1961.
You didn't have to admit that. Okay.
That's cool. And so my earliest memories, things were hard. I remember my dad, going to work as a labourer and stuff. My mother died when I was very young. So it was difficult for him to look after children.
Right, okay.
In those times, and the infrastructure wasn't really set up to help support in the way it may do today. So he had to kind of rely on a few friends and things like that.
And it's that community again, isn't it? Where people came in and stuck in their little communities and villages as well.
Yeah.
Oh, that's absolutely brilliant. So we've run out of time, unfortunately, but there's so much more. But thank you for joining us, along with Fitzroy.
Thank you. All right then, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Joyce Treasure, and I'm going to talk about my artwork and my art practice. But before I start, I just want to say thank you to Sandra Griffiths of Red Earth Collective and Birmingham Museum Trust for inviting me here to talk about my artwork and to speak with my colleague Garry Stewart and to discuss how the Windrush generation has influenced my practice. So, as I've already introduced myself, my name's Joyce Treasure, and I'm a multi-disciplinary artist, and I'm based here in Birmingham. And I came here just over 3 years ago to embark on a Black Studies degree as a mature student, and I emphasise mature because it was a degree that was the first of its kind in the UK and in Europe, and I decided to take the degree course because it would inform my practice, as my practice is around colonialism and it's also around black identity. And it's taken me a while to come to deciding that I'm a multidisciplinary artist, because when I first started, I described myself as a mixed media artist, and as I've progressed and as I sit today, I've discovered that I've been, that I've used my lifelong skills, which are jeweler, photographer, prop and set maker. I've also done theatre work, and I've also done script writing, and so that's loaned itself to my practice, the multidisciplinary embraces multiple artistic activities that combine different experimental art forms, which has been, that's something that loans itself to my work. So I use the notions of the carnivalesque to, I use the notions of the carnivalesque through the black feminist lens and decolonial thought to explore and liberate ideas related to power. And carnivalesque is, it subverts ideas, it flips things on its head. So black becomes white, rich becomes poor, up becomes down, and etc., etc. And in this piece that I created in 2016, Equipoise, it was in response to the decision to remove Elizabeth Fry from the £5 from the £5 note and replace her with Winston Churchill. And you can see here I've used a kind of character of 1950s white male character to point to patriarchy. And he's putting up wallpaper, and you can see that's Winston Churchill's there on the wallpaper, and that will be covering, you know, when we remove Elizabeth Fry, who was you know, a prison reformer and social reformer, who else are we removing at the same time? So on the back of her head, you can see there's a Benin bronze sitting on her head. So when we remove her, who else are we removing from our visuals? And so I can't really talk more about my practice without discussing, or I can't really, you know, when we talk about Windrush, I need to talk about my dad, and he arrived in the UK for work in October 1960, and he followed his brother who came in January 1960, and I was talking to Garry yesterday about this, and we were talking about how we can't generalize about Windrush, because it's not just the dock at Tilbury in 1948. There's a whole period, and there's some discrepancy about the dates as well. I've got 1948 there to 1968. However, there's, you know, periods that extend that a little bit further, or some dates that go up to 1971, and some people argue that it's 1958. But he came in 1960. That's Vincent Joseph Treasure, also known as Roy, and he met my mom, Mary Elizabeth Treasure, and they married in 1966, and I was born in 1965. A year and a half later, after they were married, they were separated, so that meant that I could draw on to my mixed heritage, my mixed culture. So I had my Jamaican heritage and my British heritage. And when I first began to practice, my first set of work was these monochrome images that were figurative pieces taken from a book titled Appearances, and which was a fashion photography book dated from 1945 up to around 1970s, and in this kind of in replicating these images, I was locating my identity in the images where my identity was missing. And this particular image that I titled Afro Jazz is an appropriation of an appropriation. So Anthony Armstrong Jones, also known as Lord Snowdon, married to Princess Margaret, he created this image, and it's a kind of take of a Lindy Hop style dance. So I've kind of programmed that image over his image, if you see what I mean. And so moving on, this piece is titled Litany for Those That See, and it was quite a big piece made for an exhibition called Tribe, and it's made up of common prayer book pages, postage stamps of the Queen, and is acrylic and ink on paper. And this pays homage to enslaved Africans whose lives were lost at sea during the transatlantic crossing, and also points towards artifacts that were looted by the British when they did their expedition, the Benin expedition of 1897. This expedition crippled the Kingdom of Benin, which was a monarchy kingdom that was founded in 1180. And it's just to point towards how colonialism has impacted parts of Africa and assimilated. This kingdom was assimilated into colonized Nigeria later on in life. So I'm just gonna see if I can. Yeah. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about through my work up to current date. So in 2014, I created this piece, The Girl with a Pearl Earring, and that points towards the towards a famous painting by Vermeer, which points towards the Dutch Golden Age and the dark side of wealth gained through enslavement. And then the next piece that I created in 2017 is titled Mantle, and this is how roles are handed down and responsibilities forwarded, and how this conversation is always going through new iterations, and it also points towards the Earth's mantle and its interior mass. And then the other image, untitled rather, 2017, is points towards ancestral work, and in that image our ancestors are looking back out at the viewer in what's known as the oppositional gaze, and that was a term coined by bell hooks and coined by bell hooks that was written in her essays titled Black Looks, Race Representation, and that relates to the political rebellion of black persons' rights to look back. And so in 2016, my dad passed away, and at the same time I'd done a DNA test, and a year later I decided to go on a research pilgrimage, and I visited these also that was coming up, but Black Studies was coming up on the horizon as a potential degree that I could pursue, and the research studies, the travels became a prerequisite to the Black Studies. So I started in Jamaica and went to Haiti, which Haiti really informs my work, my current work. Then I went to New York. Senegal was showing up on my DNA, so I wanted to visit Senegal. I went to Gambia, Ghana, and Nigeria was prominent in my DNA results, and so I wanted to spend time there. And then in 2017, I began my Black Studies course. And during my Black Studies, I then got invited to participate in a show which became a solo show, and that was titled Our Visual Cortex and Obscuridad. And in that piece, I was able to experiment with assemblage, which was I'd learnt a lot of those techniques in Haiti, and I made this piece Gone with the Wind to point to how, given the location of that film, that the black agency is loaning itself to stereotypes, and so what does this signal in terms of our learning and what we receive? And then in 2018, I was involved in a project with the Tate Exchange and Birmingham School of Art, and I created this piece, all the produce of the land. It was a collaboration with a colleague by the name of Luke Sewell, and he does lino cuts, and we worked. You can see his lino cuts in the background, and we did Adinkra symbols and an image of Queen Nanny. And then in 2019, I was successful in gaining a residency with Bruntwood and Grand Union. And at that time, that was coming towards the end of my Black Studies degree, and so I knew that I could kind of fit that in. I wrote my application around the idea that it would support my dissertation, and that I could present a body of work titled Hymns, and in that body of work. So let me just go back a second. So in that body of work, there were several artifacts, and the dissertation was titled working through the legacy of colonialism and personal trauma using an artistic bricolage and ethnography. Easier said than done. And so I did a series of small small portraits, and I did assemblage work, and the work acted like a polyvocal of different voices that were all speaking to each other. All the portraits were of civil rights, either civil rights speakers or artists that challenged civil rights. And the body of work questioned politics, religion, hierarchy, and the themes throughout reflected segments of my black identity from a subjective and social perspective. And finally, in the last piece, this was a film that was created. It was commissioned through Parallel State, and they wanted artists to respond to a new world, and so I created this art film, The Breakaway State, which was produced in 3 parts. So the first and second part was a performance film, and the third part was an artistic, it was a narrative that took academic writing, looking back. It was looking back from the future, reflecting back. So there was phase 1, 2, and 3, and yeah, that's thank you. That's it. I've taken a few snippets of my artwork, but I couldn't, obviously, I just took a few pieces. I could say more about how my artwork has influenced through the Windrush generation. So there's artists that I particularly like, but I think, I think we'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Fantastic. Welcome, everybody, and there you have an amazing round of applause. So Joyce, again, so much to unpack. One of the things is this very room that we're recording in, you and I met as part of the Black Studies course as well.
Yeah, we
so
did, 2017.
2017.
Yeah,
so Joyce has finished. I'm a bit slow, so I've got a couple of more weeks left as well. But, that's how it goes, really. So I wanted to really talk to you. I mean, there's so much to talk about your work, but I wanted to talk about the Windrush inspiration and generation as well. And there was a particular slide, if we can go back to the slide with Claudia Jones. And for those who don't know, Claudia Jones, there's many stories. As we've told you, some of the stories today, people would dispute some of the facts and figures. But Claudia Jones was one of those who was involved in starting Notting Hill Carnival, well, the precursor to Notting Hill Carnival, which was the St. Pancras Carnival. She was involved in that as a director of some of the things that were going on in the area at the time. But she's such an amazing woman, and I guess she inspired you as a black feminist.
Yeah.
She was also classed as a Marxist as well. She came to this country because she'd been expelled from the US as well, from Trinidad and the US as well. Yeah. So, I mean, I've seen her there. So what was your reasoning for putting her into, she's such a key figure of the Windrush. What was your reason for including her in your exhibition?
Well, because she's such a determined character. And I think when I was creating those portraits, I think I was drawing on each person's brilliance and kind of looking towards to what they did and thinking, well, these people are quite extraordinary. And Claudia Jones, she had to leave Trinidad. She went to the US. She then had to leave the US, as you say, and still she was determined, and still she was able to fight for the cause and fight for rights. And she helped to raise money to pay for lots of things that were happening in response to the Notting Hill riots. Absolutely. She paid for a lot of the fees for them to go people going to court. So and also I used to live in the area. I used to live in Notting Hill and Ladbroke Grove. I'd spent a long time there, like 20 odd years. And so the carnival is close to my heart.
And isn't it disappointing that they've just announced yesterday or today that the carnival is now cancelled?
I know,
so,
I know.
You know.
yeah, it's really sad. I mean, you can understand why as well.
Yeah.
And so because she played such an important role, and like you say, not the only person to start the carnival, and because of her determination, and she was a Marxist, and when I was a young girl, I used to be a member of the Young Communist League.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so, you know, I love all that. I love it. I mean, she's an inspiration to me.
And something else that I've only just noticed as well, but something else to that. I noticed in your art you used a lot of newspaper type clippings, is it? Or the background, and like obviously she set up the West Indian newspaper, which was the first black newspaper in Britain at the time. So I'm just really keen. Was there a link between that, or?
No. I mean, yes, she did do that, but no. I use in those portraits, I use the common prayer book pages that were left over from the previous artwork, Litany for Those at Sea. Right. And I kind of like this idea that you can take pieces from past art pieces and put them into the new ones, and so that's the common prayer book pages are what's in the background. Yeah.
And I suppose again it links to as well with Claudia. She was one of the people that paid for Malcolm X to come here when he came to Britain, and he came to Smith.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so a little bit. Yeah, she paid. She was one of the people involved in bringing them here. But it's like
that's amazing. I love that.
So it's just like watching how that influence of Windrush comes to now. And as you're a descendant of Windrush effectively, so you know you have that impact as well with your work as well. And I'm just going to talk about some of the other influences that you mentioned as well. So you talked about emotional well-being, you talked about creativity coming out of the work, but also being a direct response from the sort of legacy of the Windrush generation. Does that make sense? And what I'm trying to get to with that as well is understanding that within this time now, where 73 years ago the Windrush generation came here, they spawned families and friends in here, as we heard Sue talk about earlier. Yeah. And now we're here talking about them 73 years ago having a scandal that's current today. Yeah. And I suppose it's reflective of your art in today's society as well.
Well, with Litany of Those at Sea, I wanted to include that to kind of say that this hostile environment is not anything new. As we know, with colonialism, that's been happening throughout time. And it's kind of it does play out throughout my work.
You also mentioned, we were talking yesterday, so the viewers know we was having a conversation about what we talk about today, and then you also really went in about talking about your emotional response compared to, you said that I think it was something about your work isn't drawn out of emotion, otherwise you'd experience anger. Can you just allude on that?
It kind of there have been like even with the piece where I respond to Elizabeth Fry being removed from the £5 note, that really annoyed me. I mean, I've not even used the right term, but it really annoyed me that happened. And so I was able to make an art piece that reflected how annoyed I was. But of course, you recreate it in a way that's appropriate for an audience. I think I said, that you don't want to censor yourself, but at the same time, you do have a responsibility when you're making your artwork to try and reach a broader audience other than maybe those that are on side with black feminism, for example. But yes, it does exercise some of that frustration. I'm able to get it out through my work.
And I suppose, again, we're talking about Birmingham Museums, who sponsored this event today and organised this event. And we're talking about legacy, again, with the generation of young children who may be watching this. We could be famous in a couple of years, But how would you sort of, explain to young children what it is that you do and how it connects into the Windrush generation and what it means to them now? We talked earlier about 73 years. We talked about it not being a new thing, the way that people experience the sort of, I suppose I'm choosing my words carefully here, but I suppose we're looking at the scandal today because people, that is marked now, that's in people's minds today. But we don't talk.
History, isn't it?
But it took 70 years for us to get a National Windrush Day as well. So now that it's in the public cycling, we're still doing lots of work. How would you inform young people to express themselves through art?
Well, to just really go with, I mean, it's a real old cliche, to go with the heart and to, listen to what's happening around you and just and just get it out and write it, you know, get it down in whatever format, however it comes out, and just exercise it, get it out, and then you can revisit the work and fine-tune it as you go along. But it's really important that young people learn to use their voice and express themselves, because great things happen when you start talking about, I think it's Patricia Hill Collins talks about, when you, if you're in a position of oppression, you're almost in a position of, I don't want to use the word privilege, because that's going to give the wrong message, but you're able to see things that other people can't see. You can see the cracks. You know, if you're in a real position of privilege and you don't suffer from any oppressions or any problems, you don't see the cracks. But when you're sitting from a certain standpoint, you get to see those cracks, and it's worth talking about those cracks, because those cracks can make change. So that's what I would say to young people.
And I suppose we're influenced as well by the simple fact that, you know, we talked about some of the exhibitions. I was talking to Lindsay, who introduced the programme, talking about the past is now, decolonising museums. There's all this activity and work taking place. And I suppose as an artist, it's for people like you to capture that and, you know, show your emotional response back to those kind of campaigns. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it encourages people to you know, you bounce off each other, right? So there was in the race report that we recently received, there was some criticism around decolonialism, but decolonialism is an important body of academic body of work that looks at you know, locations and gives voices to people that otherwise wouldn't have voices, you know, that wouldn't be able to speak. So.
And I suppose people have taken that and they're using this word woke in a reversal of what it should really mean. But people really need to hold on to the fact that, you know, people are talking about a culture now, but it's reflected of the country's past. And it's also that embarrassment of the country's past. Yeah,
it is embarrassing. And you have to, you know, you have to kind of be self-reflective in that space. Everyone has to be self-reflective in that space, because it might be that you've lost your own identity, or that you've lost self-esteem, or that you're from a position of privilege. And unless we reflect, you know, with anything, we can't move forward, really, can we? Crucial. And
there's one thing, really important thing that I wanted to talk about as well. So you're a multidisciplinary artist as well, and next year is the 40th anniversary of the Black Arts Movement. And I just thought it was really key to end on that point, really, and just talk about your sort of inspiration from the Black Arts Movement, but also for us to highlight what their contribution was. Because for those who don't know, they were a group of artists that couldn't get work in the UK, displaying their work, exhibitions or galleries wouldn't show their work. And they formed this organisation that would actually show their work. There's quite a few different reincarnations of it. So you have those from the 50s and 60s. So you're the artist, you tell me about it.
Well, there's a Black Art movement in America, isn't there?
Absolutely.
And then there's the Black Art group in the UK. And the Black Art group in the UK was starting to do something quite interesting, in that they were doing a cut and paste and moving things out of the political into something new, which is now being picked up in contemporary arts and contemporary work.
So what is contemporary art? Can you just explain?
Well, current
like,
is so like people. You know, those fresh fresh work out there. I think the Museum Trust have got Andrew Jackson coming in next week. So he's work like Andrew Jackson. I mean, the Black Art Group. I went to a talk that was presented by Eddie Chambers. I think it was about 8 years ago, and it was one of his pieces, which is around. It's a triptych, and he's cut up the Union Jack and placed it into the swastika. I can't remember what the title's called now. I haven't got it in my notes, but work like that really has influenced my practice and gave me the courage to kind of be more political.
Excellent. So we're going to have to end it there, as we've run out of time. But one of the things is, for anything you've heard tonight, you can follow up, you can get the names of the bands, you can understand who was talking about what positions as well. I'm just going to read this out for you as well. So, right. So we've been asked a question here by Yvette. You mentioned the influence of Haiti and assemblage. Were African-American artists Romer Breeden, I hope I said that right, and Faith Ringgold, contributors to the development of your work.
I do know Faith. I didn't pick up on the first name, but I do know Faith Ringgold's work.
Yeah.
I've seen her work. I don't know if it's influenced. It probably has influenced my practice, but I can't recall a particular piece in which I've looked at Ringgold's work and thought, oh, okay, I'm gonna draw on that. Although I am starting to move into textiles, and she did lots of textile work. So yeah.
Isn't she a quiltist? And she had an exhibition here
at the Serpentine
18 months ago, 2 years ago.
Serpentine, I think it was probably a bit longer than that.
Was it longer than that?
Because
right, okay.
we've got the pandemic, haven't we? So I
Oh,
think it was
probably, probably just before.
Probably 2.5 years ago, maybe something like this.
Bad, yeah. So Joyce, I mean, I've got so much more that we wanted to speak to you about as well, but we'll run out of time, unfortunately. I'll just double check that actually, because audience, are you still there?
Yeah. You got 2 more minutes.
Oh, 2 more minutes. So is there another question? No? Okay. So I'm going to ask you another question. In fact, how would you like to end? I mean, you talked about your slides, you talked about your work as well. Let's end on a really good question. Legacy. You talked about the legacy of your family. You talked about your dad coming here and marrying your mum.
Yeah.
As well. How much of that does that play in your life now?
Well, I like I mentioned, they split up when I was 1.5 years, and so I had the fortunate experience of having two different cultures. Yeah. And so that definitely does play through in my work. Yeah. I'm always drawing on, I appropriate images of the Queen a lot. And so that loans itself to my British identity. And then I usually overimpose images of the Queen with black culture. And so that loans itself to my Jamaican identity. And, you know, that relationship between Britain and Jamaica is quite close, even though it's had lots of conflicts, and we've had to face lots of issues in arriving in the UK. You know, you still can't disengage from that, especially for myself as a mixed heritage person. It's, you know, part of my makeup, and so it's always coming through in my practice.
Yeah, and I think there's one more thing that we'll end on as well, which obviously, as young as you look and as young as I look, we're both actually mature students as well. Yeah,
we are mature students, which is quite relevant. It's quite relevant because that's a new, you know, it's a new program, right?
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
That it's only just been introduced in it came in 2017.
Yeah, and we both fought with black identity, self-identity as well, understanding social identity. Yeah. You know, it's not a plug for the course, by the way, but it was just talking about how we did black studies both later in our lives and how it has an influence, because we're now able to talk in a space about our lived experience. Yeah. And I think we talked about that influences your art as well. Yeah. I think we used the phrase autoethnographical practice, if I can say.
Autoethnographical practice.
Autoethnographical.
Yeah,
all right, okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah. That's 2 mistakes I've made today.
Yeah.
So do you want to end on that note and talk about why young students who are watching this today, how we can inspire them to? It's never too late to attend university.
No, never too late to attend
we still get
especially if you're young.
And we still get discount travel.
If you can still, if you get to this age, you can still do it. Then no excuse really.
And it is really important, because one of the things learning for today is for young children to understand. You know, it's a shame to see that 73 years on from the Windrush, it took 70 years for it to be recognised by the government. Yeah. You know, so we've had 3 years of National Windrush Day. Let me hear a woo woo. There you go. So, if you can get out, support events like this. There's plenty of events taking place. Unfortunately, COVID has stopped that, but there are still plenty of events. And, get involved and understand the Windrush, understand why they're calling it a scandal, but understand how it became a scandal, because it relates back to race relation acts and laws that were passed that created this. People are looking around and going, oh, how did it happen? It happened because certain people created this, and those people, like us, have had to live through those experiences as well. But that's a story for another day. So we'd just like to take it. Joyce, thank you so much for your chat, your presentation today.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank, I've got to go backwards in order. I've got Call Me Unique. Okay, Ire-Ish. Sue Brown. Fitzroy Karen. Jamal, whose surname I don't know, but Jamal. And then we'd also like to thank all the technicians here today, Lindsay from the Birmingham Museums Trust, Sandra Griffiths, Nick as well. And I think Sandra's going to end as well. She's going to sing for us.
I will not be singing.